All right, hi, thank you everybody for coming to my talk. My name is Rachel Bradley-Haas and I am from Big Time Data. Before we get started, I want to give you all a heads up of why this is such a passionate topic to me. I come from a background of B2B SaaS, and for us, it's always been really difficult for us to make the most of this product data. We've been focusing on how to take our product data and make it something important to customer success, to support, and so on. And we always feel like we have a hard time communicating with them, seeing eye to eye, making sure that we're using accurate descriptions, definitions, and making the most of it. What we want to do here is take all of the hard work we've done and put it in the hands of the people that can make the most of it and take action on it. Whether that be sales, understanding the product usage, customer success, understanding when there's a churn risk, or just financial people trying to understand who's spending the most money. So, before we move forward, I'm going to introduce myself. I am Rachel. I'm the co-founder of Big Time Data. Sadly, Alex couldn't be here. Unfortunately for me, I will be running the show on my own. But as you can see, we've been best friends since 2016. We started together 7 years ago at Heroku, where we ran business operations before we moved on to Mattermost, an open source Slack competitor. During our time there, we focused on making sure that people were able to understand the data that was coming from the product, what they were doing, how to grow their product usage naturally, and enabling marketing teams to lead them on their journey. So what is product-led growth? Well, personally, I had to look that up to make sure I was even giving the right presentation today, and yes, I did look it up this morning just to confirm I knew what it was. For me, it's about how do people come to a product, free, unpaid, so on, and understand the usage and value that it brings without having someone touch them or email them or so on. So in my mind, product-led growth is the low-touch journey from freemium to paid and beyond. Well, let's talk about that. We all know Slack. We're all part of the community. If not, you should probably join because I really hope you're blowing up our Slack channel right now. I want to be the most popular one. So your Slack, you come in, you're a free user. That's great. That's not making them any money. But you don't see a salesperson immediately reaching out to you. That's not product-led growth. Sales shouldn't be reaching out. You're a measly little one person. Granted, I think I'm pretty amazing. But what they do is they help you understand the different features that are relevant. You want more messages, you want more chats, you want to be able to go on Slack Connect? Well, you're going to have to pay for that. And they don't send you emails. They bring it up in the product. They understand your usage. They want to know what you're going to do next and predict that and be able to show it to you. So for us, product-led growth is low touch, natural nurture until you reach that motion, and then you're going to become enterprise. So, most of you understand that when it comes to having consensus on numbers, there is none. If you can't trust one number, you can't trust any numbers. So most of you may or may not know, I did a lot of research, I found this online, I trust this, I vetted it. 73% of product, go-to-market, and finance teams don't feel they can trust the data generated by data teams. So what do? They go around us, they go behind our backs. They try to generate this number because maybe we're too slow. Maybe we didn't give them the number that they wanted. So what do? They make it up. They make up the number they want to see, just like I did here. This number is not real. I made this number up because I couldn't find what I wanted. So what is the cause of this? Well, there's two major categories that cause this: lack of reusable data models and utilization of data resources. For us, I think a lot of the times before we became the most amazing data modelers, obviously everyone in the room is great, we used to do ad hoc requests. We used to have someone ask us a question, and we would write queries that only answered one question. So what does that mean? 50,000 queries by the end of the year. I'm a really fast typer. But what does that also mean? It means that there is no data governance here. It means that if I change the definition of something, maybe my query I wrote last week isn't accurate. How do I know that every single query that was written removes the excludable users, whether they're an abuser on your platform, whether they're an internal user, and so on? We don't know because we can't monitor that. There is no data governance. There is no flow of this understanding of a definition from model to model. Secondly, once again, no single source of truth. How many of you in this room have ever been asked for ARR? If I went to your companies and asked for ARR, my bet is there would be 10 different definitions, 3 of them stored in Looker, 2 of them in Metabase, 1 in Hex. Yes, we have that many BI tools. Let's all just admit it. And someone has something in Excel, probably finance, thinking that they're accurate without really knowing what the source of truth is. And I bet you one thing, None of those numbers are right because they did not come from the data team. So that is an issue that we have to solve. Lastly, no reusable code. It means that every single time we get a question, we have to repeat ourselves, hundreds and hundreds of lines. And personally, I don't like to repeat myself, so you better be listening. Secondly, utilization of data resources. I am not a report monkey. I refuse to be. If that's your jam, go for it. It's not mine. Once again, I don't like to repeat myself. I build something once, sure. Build it twice, all right. Third time, come back to me in a week because I'm literally just going to have automated the entire thing. Lastly, we are bombarded with one-off requests. There is no such thing as self-service in my mind. I'm fine with having someone disagree with me, but we need semi-self-serve. We need to iterate quickly. We need to self-serve ourselves, where we can move quickly and answer these questions faster and accurately, but still knowing that we trust the numbers. Okay, well, what is the solution? Well, first of all, I don't think any of us would be here if we didn't believe that DBT helped us solve these problems. It may not always be the solution, but right now DBT allows us to do reusable code and build models that impact each other and flow downstream. Secondly, which is why we're all here today in my room talking about this, is we need to map the entities. We need to know how each part of our business, whether it's the product, the business CRMs, or the billing entities, all map to each other. What are the relationships? Are they many-to-many? Are they one-to-one? Who's the parent? Who's the child? How do these all come together? Because you can't create these reusable data models unless you understand how all of these things connect to each other and the right measures and definitions that are relevant to them. And lastly, build out your data model for scalability using this entity model framework. That's what we're here for. And for all of you out there that are maybe just analysts or data engineers or so on, we're all kind of analytics engineers when we blend it together. They need people like us. So luckily, we're here growing the community, and we'll be able to deliver more analytics engineers. All right, that's a lot of buzzwords, so we'll go with graphics now. We're going to make this generic because I promise we're going to give you a tangible example later. All right, so here we have a team, users, and resources. Okay, what is a resource? We'll just use Slack. I think everybody here uses Slack. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the DBT community, hopefully blowing it up so my channel looks great. A resource is anything that a user or a team or something can consume. Let's call it a channel, a DM, a message. All of these resources roll up to a certain higher level entity of what someone can consume. And then over here, you have a Salesforce account and a Stripe customer. Might be a different CRM account, might be ChargeBee, might be something else that you have as your billing entity for Stripe customer. So what we need to do is we need to say, okay, here's our entities. For me, the most important thing is we need to know what level are we billing customers at. In order for us to understand what is the right level to roll up usage and then map that over and hand it off and understand what's really going on, we need to know what level are we billing customers at. It doesn't make sense to start tracking a bunch of things at a higher level or pre-aggregate it when we're not really going to understand how does this usage map to monetary value, how do we continue to expand this, what are we really focusing on, who are the admins might be important, but also who are the billing customers, who's really fronting the bill on this. So now we have our team. Next thing we need to do is figure out what is the source of truth. I know people online, hopefully you can answer this with a 30-second delay as well as people maybe shouting it out here. How many people think that I should go to Stripe as the source of truth for a resource? That doesn't make sense, right? Like, why would I go there? So how many people think that I should go to a production database to get the source of truth for resources? All right, we got a few hands. In 30 seconds, there will be a lot of thumbs up online. How many people think that I should go to a production database to get information about my Salesforce account? Right? No, doesn't make sense. What we need to do is we need to find where these source of truths lie, and we need to trust that data. So when we're trying to model this data, I shouldn't be pulling stuff down from Salesforce into my database and then trying to understand what is my team utilization. We need to figure out where does that come from, how do we get that into our main data warehouse, how do we enrich it, and then how do we connect the dots? What are these relationships? This may sound really, really silly, like, duh, why would you not do this? But honestly, some of the times you end up seeing a lot of things like these teams showing up in Salesforce as accounts. Or maybe the billing entity doesn't even map to the right thing. You're having your billing entity map to the user. Taking a step back and thinking about how do all these things connect and how should you be joining on them so you're not fanning things out. How do you roll up the right metrics when it's account distinct or a sum or all those things? Understanding many to many or hierarchies or one-to-ones is so important when you're building out these models. Let's make it tangible. All right, so this is like a hot take, I guess. Entity modeling for dbt Cloud, our best guess of how they would do it if they did it right. And I'm not saying they're not doing it right, I'm just saying I don't have access to any of these things, so we're also gonna keep it pretty generic. The entities. I don't know what CRM they use, so we're gonna call it CRM accounts. We don't know what they're billing on, but I think we have a guess. And then you have your dbt teams, your dbt users, dbt jobs, dbt models, probably 30 other things that they're tracking as well. So what do we need to do first? We need to figure out the hierarchy, product for CRM versus billing, and then the billing level entity. This is really small. I'm sorry, I try to fit a lot in here. But at the top, you'll see the billing entities. So we're gonna go ahead and say that they have two billing entities, customer A and customer B. Those will map to what we believe the right billing level entity is, which is team A and team B. Underneath there, you have jobs, models, users, and what we made up is a model execution history. The whole goal of this is to understand, from my perspective, what is the utilization of these models? Who are the monthly or weekly active users? What are the jobs? Who are the teams? Or personally, I'm really sorry I didn't add in WOPs here, which was a first acronym that I've ever heard. So you can see that there are many-to-many relationships here, which makes it very complicated depending on how you want to look at it. But not all jobs or not all, I guess all jobs do trigger models. But I was going to say not every single model is triggered by a job. You have to worry about environments. You have to worry about command lines. What are the models? Model names can constantly be changing. We understand the complexity for this presentation. Let's pretend it's a lot easier. Over there on my right? Yeah, you're right too. You see your CRM entities. One of the things that I highly recommend, if you all haven't, is start working on data activation in your CRM entity and make sure that you have whatever level your billing entity is as an object in your CRM instance. I will tell you, I've done a presentation on this before. If you were to just aggregate up all the team usage and then throw it over to an account, that doesn't really help a salesperson or a nurturing person in Salesforce or CRMs, right? What you end up seeing is maybe someone's overusing resources and someone's underusing. And each of them will have their own ARR and own entitlements. When you don't have the accurate level of entitlements and usage, it's really hard to upsell, understand churn risk, and so on. Once again, why it's important for us to understand the billing entities. And then you can see here we have users that move over to contacts. Not all contacts you would think are necessary. We tend to think about admins, billing users, and really high value users being moved over as contacts because it allows us to then engage with those people, or when there is a sales motion, you can reach out to them and have them attached to an opportunity. Once again, really small. For all of you that have great eyes, congratulations. I know not everybody does. I'll walk through this. The model execution history has information like a run ID, an environment ID, trigger type. I'm even having a hard time reading it. Sorry, it'll be in PDF. Oh, this is even smaller. Okay. Start timestamp, end timestamp, team ID, user ID, job ID, and model ID. Okay, well, we all know event data is really not this clean, but for this presentation's sake, it is right now. So one of the things is when you standardize some event history like this, which we try to do as much as possible, we call it our event history, we're able to then say, okay, each of these events is triggered. How does it relate to each of the entities that we've already talked about? You have a team, a user, a job, and a model. Here's your product entities, entity names, dimensions, and measures. One of the things we didn't talk about earlier is defining the dimensions and measures that are important at each level. It doesn't necessarily make sense for us to roll up average time of model runs previous 30 days to a team level, maybe. It could not. It doesn't make sense for us to maybe add up number of successful run. No, that's always important. But in these scenarios, you want to understand who are the active users, what are the jobs that are failing, how many jobs do they have? Maybe what we want to do is say, as a marketing person, I want them to understand that they don't need to just have one job. We have evolved. One job does not rule them all. We need to break it up. So maybe what we do is we say, okay, this is great. We can see that this team only has one active job per month. Okay, let's send them an email and tell them, hey, you know what? We have a recommendation. Have you thought about splitting it out into hourly, daily? Do all these things to be running quickly. Hey, we see that you're actually running things in a synchronous order. Have you tried dbt build yet? We haven't seen that in your commands. But because of the way we've modeled it in these different entities, we're allowing us to join and filter on predetermined dimensions and not create a 500-line SQL query. This is just the product side. The part that we've talked about is how do we map product to your CRM entities. This is where you start moving your product data over. And you can see here we have, once again, our billing entity, our product, and our CRM entities. Over here, from customer to team to what I would consider the customer object, or custom object in Salesforce, we're able to see that we can then migrate over all of the relevant data from here. So you're able to see ARR at a team level accurately. You're able to see number of runs previously 30, number of monthly active users. And the thing that's great about this is you're not then going from user all the way writing a custom query to only have one maybe data activation sent. And now next thing you know, you have like 50,000 different queries that are touching your CRM or Salesforce instance. That's pretty terrible. How much time do you think it would take us to go and revamp everything? If in the underlying logic changes, we now have to remove things, maybe we have a new definition, or my favorite, my absolute favorite, is when the entire company decides they're gonna rename an object and they tell you that you have to change the name in a database. I will tell you, that has happened. And it was the most painful thing ever because we did not have DBT. We did not have DBT. So those are the types of things that you're thinking about. Like all of this can come from, how many did I say there are? Okay, well, we're missing CRM teams here. But all of this, if you create these entities, allows you to start accessing this data, opening it up, you throw it in a BI tool, you have those joins. Now, instead of handling 50,000, that's a lot, but you never know with some of these teams, 50,000 unique queries, you're now having to build off just a core set of models, joining, filtering, and having that reusable, being able to send it to a HubSpot or a Salesforce or a MailChimp or whatever you want to send it to or whatever you want to do with it. It's a lot easier when you have these simplified relationships and simplified aggregations of metrics. I feel like I went through this really fast. I'm really sorry if people didn't get it. Closing time. What is the time check? Oh, sweet, okay, I'm doing great then. Okay, so closing time. Why does this matter to me? Well, for me, honestly, a lot of what I feel like is data's locked in the warehouse. And sorry if there's salespeople out there listening or people that are running a legacy Salesforce instance, but I hate it when people are making up metrics in Salesforce. I hate it with passion. I work so hard to build these beautiful models that are so clean that are in a BI tool, but guess what? They don't want to leave their CRM. We used to call it Stockholm Syndrome with Salesforce Classic because we felt like salespeople, I know. It's like you hate it, but they can't get off of it, and finally Salesforce had to kick them off, but then still admins now let them go backwards. It's like that, right? They don't want to leave. They're stuck in it. It's their natural habitat. They feel comfy. It's like a warm sweater, which we could all use with the AC here, if I'm being honest. So this is why I'm passionate about it. Like, I spent so much time. This is my baby. I want the world to enjoy it. I want marketing to be making accurate decisions on it. I want objects being created for the right reasons in Salesforce, not just like blowing up your Salesforce instance. I want to know that I have control of the metrics and that they're being used accurately. And so for us to do this, we need to model it in a way that allows us to map consumable data for these people that are data illiterate, and bring it to them in their natural habitat. So in order to do that, we need to understand product usage at various levels. We need to understand how that maps from product to billing to CRM, and how those entities can roll up in our meaningful, whether it's to a salesperson, a marketer, and so on. And then we need to enable data activation in third-party SaaS tools. This is how we spread our knowledge. This is how we scale as data teams. This is how we allow our customers to grow and understand our product better. Let's be intelligent every step of the way based off the data we see in the warehouse. So how do we apply it at our own companies? Build from the ground up. This may sound dumb, but take a step back, whiteboard it, figure out what are the entities, figure out how they relate to each other. See how many queries are built to answer one question instead of all of them. From there, you move up the hierarchy and aggregate. Build the next level of entity models. Figure out, how do my resources roll up? What are the measures that matter? How do I calculate that accurately? And lastly, iterate as business processes and metrics evolve. We do this all the time, But rather than having to write a new query, we go to the base model and we say, okay, this is the new measure that we need. This is the new caveat that's built in. Let's create a measure. How does that flow to the next model? What's the right way to do it? Do we have to go back to the most granular model and do a count distinct, or can we sum it up from a middle layer? This will really help you scale as an analytics engineer or an organization, and it helps us use a lot of repeatable code. And we wanted to do an open source project. It will be coming, but unfortunately with Alex being out, we were not able to do it. But if you're in this Slack channel, we are going to open source using DBT seed files to load some fake data. And we will be allowing people to see how we would model exactly what you saw here online. So we will post that as soon as it's available. One of the things I love about this is like open source in general is amazing. We want to make sure people are able to see this presentation and then feel it in their hands in real life. If people want to comment on the open source code or disagree with how it's done, I would love that, because honestly, we're just continuing to grow as a community. So thank you. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Perfect. Everybody got it all. I'm expecting to see PLG entities in all of them. Oh, okay, we got one online.
Yeah, we got some questions from the Slack community. So the first
Only
question.
pick the easy ones.
How is this different from dimensional modeling is the first question.
Oh, man. Man, oh, man. I think, okay, so it's not necessarily different than dimensional modeling. I think the big thing for us is like, a lot of the times it's like, this is more of like, how do you map dimensional fact modeling, event modeling, historical stuff to your business processes? Like, don't get too stuck in like, this is how it needs to be done, be rigid. It's like, if someone can't consume and make the most of your model because it's too rigid of like the best practices and this has to be named this way and this has to be that and you can only do these things and you can only touch things in prod schema versus this, like, yes, it's good to have best practices, but it's more about like, how do you build for people to consume it downstream? Like, I think some of the times we over-perfect what we're doing and we don't think about how is someone gonna consume this and how do we make the most of the data. So it's not against dimensional modeling, it's more like theorizing how do these things connect and how do I make sure that it's like actually usable, which I think a lot of the times we struggle with.
The next question is, how do data teams and analytics engineers familiarize themselves with SFS entity hierarchies? Usually they're locked up in sales team silos.
I mean, this is a huge gap. I understand that. I think the other place that we have these huge gaps is also between product and financial systems, whether it be Stripe or whatnot. It's a huge thing. I think it's really important that data teams partner with their RevOps organization in general. I think one of the things that we can do to help scale our organizations, actually one of my clients is now so data-driven, but originally was kind of adverse to it, working in Salesforce and understanding it. It's a lot about building trust, schedule time with them, ask them what their sales motion is, ask them to walk you through what does the sales process look like. And when they're walking you through it, say, oh, okay, what is this object called? Okay, how does it relate to these other things? Why does someone do this way? It's really important for us to not only go upstream to the data producers in your production database, but also downstream. Technically it's still upstream and downstream. Like, how are they using this data? What are their processes? Every single person that's generating data in your company, you should have a conversation with and understand why are they generating it, what's the process that's creating that data, and then how do I consume it? Anyone else? Mm-hmm.
Imagine that a company has a HubSpot or other CRMs. Do you think that the level of replicability is high? I mean,
yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's why I keep saying Salesforce, because that's really what I've done in a lot of the clients. But we've also done HubSpot as well. I think it's really, as long as you have, and I know these tools are evolving. I think, once again, I said it's really important to have a custom object, I believe, in your CRM system that represents your billing entity, because that's the level at which usage up and charged, and that's kind of like the way you would sell it once you move from product-led growth to enterprise. But I think it's applicable across all of them. Really what matters is when you're going through, making sure that you can map what is a product entity to the right level over in your CRM. So I think what we tend to find is that 80% of what we do from client to client is the same. And really what's different is the underlying resources and those hierarchies and relationships. So this should be applicable across all of these. And I know this was more of a, I guess I should have caveated, this is more of a B2B presentation. And so B2C has its own intricacies as well, but this was mostly focused on B2B, and I think it's really applicable across all of those.
The next question is sort of related to that. What if your Salesforce instance is a tangled mess of flows and triggers and free text fields? Might be asking for a friend.
I mean, I've been in those before. I think, okay, so the thing I think is like we have to be educating people on why. Like, why do we need this cleaned up? How is this data being consumed? Because I think a lot of the times people don't realize how much we can automate in the warehouse. These people that are working in Salesforce are doing manual data uploads, like manual cleaning, and if we help them understand why you shouldn't have free text field or why you shouldn't have multi-pick lists, which is something people argue with, and personally why you shouldn't have leads, but we're not gonna go there. You help them understand why it's important, and honestly, why are you having so many flows? Probably because you didn't feel like you could trust the data team to do this automation in your warehouse. Do these things need to be live as a trigger, or are these things that could be an hour later? A lot of the times people will be generating these massive flows or Apex or things because they don't feel that there's any other option. It's up to us to understand and go interview them and say, what are you doing? What's your most painful thing? A lot of the times you'll realize it's a really easy answer and you're like, you know, I could just do that in DBT, right? So I think in general, try to empathize. They don't know what they don't know. And it's our responsibility, or at least I view it as my responsibility, to go and educate them how to be using the right tools for the right problem. And most of the time for me, it's, can we just get the data in the warehouse and I'll show you how easy it is? So, thank you.
Let's give it up. Alrighty, if anyone has any other questions that weren't answered, and there were a couple in the Slack channel, please go to the Slack channel. We will highlight them, and the speaker will be around answering them in Slack for about an hour or two afterwards. Thank you all for joining us, and if you're going to be around, you can join us up for the next session in about 17 minutes. Have a great day.